when very right-wing Republican representative, former Republican representative Joe Walsh from Illinois comes out and says Donald Trump is a danger. Yes, they want to be a dictator, but he's a danger. When he comes out and he says that that what Donald Trump runs is an autocratic cult, an autocratic right-wing cult, you know that we're talking about something that is pretty darn serious. And the thing that he points out that I think more need to point out is the people that need some talking to right now are misled Republican voters who are a member of the cult. But you know one thing, it's hard to get people out of the cult. The cult doesn't represent a majority. The cult does not even represent the necessary majority in swing states. The problem is that we have supporters of Donald Trump for millions of other reasons, or people that simply won't vote for the Democratic ticket or otherwise because they just can't stomach to do it. And in so doing, they ultimately give power to the cult. Folks, we have to be smart with our vote. We have to make sure not to make that mistake. Listen to what Joe Walsh had to say, and Jennifer Rubin as well. I think you're going to find it quite interesting, then we'll move it on the other side.
Thank you both for being here. Joe Walsh, let me start with you. I've sort of been using the language as the Republican Party goes further and further to the right, but I always think that that's a separate issue, right? The rightward shift of the Republican Party is not what we're really talking about here. We're talking about authoritarianism and dictatorship and fealty and all these weird other things that are not even the same as when you were you were on the right of the Republican Party in Congress.
Ali, back when I was in Congress, part of the Tea Party wave, you didn't like me much back then, and I understood it. But because I was right, probably too far right on the issues, and you'd have me on your show, and we would debate and argue those issues. This isn't a left-right thing. You nailed it in your top today. One of America's two major political parties has become an authoritarian embracing cult. That's the headline. That's the fear. This has nothing to do with left, right on the issues. This has everything to do with Republican voters. And we don't talk about them enough, Ali. We talk about Trump all the time. But the Republican base wants an authoritarian. They want a dictator. They tell me that every single day.
Jen, let's explore that a little bit. It doesn't seem logical that anybody would want that, but we've seen in history it happens. Most dictators in history didn't overthrow a government. They were brought in and then just stayed in power, which is pretty much what Donald Trump is advertising, right? Just vote me in. I'll take care of the rest. Why is that not as alarming as it sounds to the three of us?
Because people are deluded into thinking he is their champion, that they have been wronged somehow. Stuff has been taken away from them. America has changed in some nefarious fashion, and he is going to champion them and, quote, real Americans and put them back in charge. He is going to be their retribution. And unfortunately, to some people, that's very appealing. They don't look upon government as a problem solver. They don't look at government as the entity that is responsible for improving people's lives. They look at it as a way of channeling their primal anger, their resentment, and even their hatred for some aspects of American society. So you're right in saying, and Joe is absolutely right, eventually, this does come back to the voters. And we can bemoan that many in the mainstream press, unlike you, are not alarmed enough, are not taking this seriously enough, or treating this like just another election. But ultimately, it's the Republican voters that, despite all evidence to the contrary, thinks he's going to be a fit, competent, great president. And so we are on this glide path. At the very least, we're going to have Trump, I think, as the GOP nominee. And when he doesn't win, God willing, we're going to see violence the likes of which we didn't even see on January 6th.
Joe, let's go back to this whole idea, because your whole thing in the last decade or so has been engaging people, right? That's why when you and I shared no views on anything, you'd always be on my show and we'd always argue. And now that you're sort of out of the Republican Party and you're out of that mainstream, you continue to maintain dialogue with these voters. right? These people you're talking about. Is there any reasoning with them? Is there any talking to them? Do they get any of this stuff? And do they discount it as bluster that shouldn't be taken seriously?
Ali, in general, no. But with some of them, eventually, yes. To what you, and by the way, I again, just props to you, Ali, because you have been sounding this alarm about authoritarianism from the beginning. Thank you for that. I still engage with the Republican Party base because I come from the base. They've given up on democracy. They've given up on the democratic process. Like, they've got the America in their mind that they want back. They don't believe the normal democratic process can get it back for them. Hence, they want a strong man. But Ali, when I talk to them, what I find is when I can just respectfully but repeatedly put nuggets of truth in front of them, like the election wasn't stolen, and you keep going down that road with them, eventually the light bulb will go off for some of them. But I'm afraid to say for most of them, it's almost mission impossible right now.
Joe Walsh and Jennifer Rubin, and of course, Ali Velshi nails it. Folks, we got a lot of work to do. There's 11 months left till we have the next election. 11 months. There's a lot of work to do. We better start now. Forget about all those advisors, those analysts, those guys up in Washington who has never met somebody in Appalachia, who has never met somebody in Central Ohio, who has never met somebody in Wisconsin and these other places. And let's start going to the ground where people know the people they're talking to. The Democratic Party needs to wise up. You know who has? The Republican Party, because they're feeding their info to these guys through grassroots organizations, through churches, through every other avenue. As many of the analysts for Democrats stay in their ivory towers instead of hitting the pavement and going to where the people are so that they can understand the wants and needs of the people.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel. And number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.